What's up guys, and welcome to a brand new video over on SoRare. So in today's video what we're going to do is wrap up all the investments I plan on making for this weekend's Underdog investments. As always, if you guys are interested in signing up SoRare, there is a referral link down below. Once signing up and winning 5 cards on the bidding market, you will get yourself a free tradable limited card. Now don't overpay on cards to win this free tradable limited card. It's only worth between about £2 to £7, but it's a nice added bonus nonetheless. On top of that, you do have to be 18 to play SoRare because it is real life money and that money can be lost as well as it can be made. Finally, if you guys are ever interested in watching me stream this stuff live, I normally stream this every day on my Twitch from about 6, half 6 every single day. So the majority of the match week games are over and a lot of the games that are left either have very few players that are actually on SoRare or they're playing midweek, so it doesn't really matter. So we've managed to get all the investments. So what I'm going to do right now is go through my list of generally about 40-50 players and I'll talk you through them. So these are all the players that I have, I guess, in my investing, catalogue of players I'm looking to buy whenever they pop up for a good price. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to categorise them into a few different categories, obviously. We're going to categorise them into budget players because I think they'll be quite interesting for you guys. I'm then going to categorise them into defenders, midfielders and forwards because I believe there's different L5s you're looking for each position due to scarcity and so on. And then I'll just at the end of the video show you what I've already invested in. And obviously I do plan on investing in whenever these guys become cheap. And yeah, I'll just show you guys what we're looking to buy. So the first thing we're going to start off with is budget investments. Now the reason this is quite important as of recently is because they've increased the L15 from 40 to 45, the players have become more expensive. Now, the players have become more expensive because previously these guys were just plebs that only had utility for underdogs. But now that they're starting to get slightly better, they basically have utility for like Champion Europe and so on, and Challenger Europe. And now the cards basically are demanded more than just for the underdogs. And as a result, the cards have become more expensive. So what we're going to do to start it off is we are going to look at the cards that are still quite nice and cheap and basically under £10 for a nice little cheap investment. So budget players basically are players that are going to be under a tenner. So we're going to start off, or you should be able to win for under a tenner, and we're going to start off here with Jean-Paul Boites. Again, this guy has got himself a L5 or 56. He's going to go himself, obviously he's £10. At the moment his scores aren't too bad. He's having a really nice all-round score of about 50, and obviously when pulling in a decisive, getting in 77. So because he's got a solid sort of 50-55 all round, I can see there being a decent bit of demand for him. And obviously he does have that 77 to rise his L5, making his score look a little bit nicer. So the second player is someone who I've gone and purchased 21 of and got him for around about £7.50. And that is Manfred Gonla. He's actually one of the highest L5 midfielders. And he's only, again, about, well, I managed to pick him all up for about £7.50. Obviously, they'll be slightly more inflated. But yeah, what's really nice about him is he's got 5 really high scores, all round. None of them are by decisives. Because none are by decisives, it's looking pretty good. On top of that, he's literally pulling in a 50, even off the back of a loss. So, yeah, looking really promising. And again, one of the highest L5s, which is eligible for this tournament. And he's a cheaper investment. So we now get to cards that you wouldn't have seen covered in previous videos, and that's because these guys played a while ago but haven't played since, and as a result, yeah, basically they're not investments from this weekend, but they played like 2 weeks ago, and you know their scores obviously carry through. And that is Wezel Dammers. Now Wezel Dammers has a score of 57, and obviously an L15 under 45. Sadly, his high score is carried here via a decisive. Although right here he actually would have got a really good score, but obviously he went and had an error that led to goal, which obviously affected his score. But I mean that is final in a nutshell for you. But yeah, pretty decent all-round scores. Well, not amazing all-round scores, but he did manage to get himself a nice little 80 all-round score. And really overall a 57 again for a player. You know, I'm personally trying to get for around about a tenner. Is yeah, not looking too bad. Even though defenders are quite saturated when it comes to this sort of underdog investment. The next player we get to is going to be Mr. Baz Coupiers. The nice thing with Baz Coupiers, underdog and the specialist limited, coming in around about £9. Obviously he had these back-to-back really good all-round scores. Obviously he didn't have a too favourable score in the most recent game, but the nice thing for this guy is he does help with the I can't remember what it's called. It's like the Challenger Limited sort of, it's whatever one's on the mix, where you can have a maximum of 40, and obviously he fits under that, and he fits under the underdog. And he's had some really good scores. Sadly, he didn't get a good score last game. But yeah, Baz Coupiers. We then get to another defender from the Eredivisie who, again, hasn't played for a while, and that is the likes of Leroy Usu. The problem with him is his most recent high scores have been carried via decisives. He did get that score via a non-decisive, but yeah, it's a bit on and off. The good thing is he's coming in about £4, so it's yeah, not the most intimidating investment, I guess, in the world in terms of price. Yeah, plays Vitesse. I think they're a very mid-average Eredivisie team. This is a relegation team given. The next game is also PSV, which is not a pretty game, I'll be honest with you. So he does fit under the Underdog and the Specialist Limited because of the L15 under 40, so a nice little double investment there for a card you should be able to get for about £4 or £5. They're moving underway with Bart Ramsden. Now the problem for these guys is they play against Feyenoord next game, and that's not too favourable. On top of that, all three of his high recent scores have come as a result of decisives. So, yeah, bit of a reliant on a decisive right here, but not a bad score of 56 for a midfielder. That's actually not too bad, especially for a tenner. But yeah, Ramsler, the only thing that works really, really unfavourable is that they are playing Feyenoord, and, Feyenoord aren't the easiest team to play in the Eredivisie, to put it politely. And the next player we're going to get to is Lucas Lima, which again we covered in a previous video. Again, L15 under 40, so he's going to fit into the Specialist Limited and the Underdog. 52 for a defender for Underdog is not very good whatsoever. But, again, for a player who's coming in at about £4, it's not looking too bad. And again, he's had some really, really good all-round scores for the last 4 games. Which is quite, nice and favourable for, once again, a person who's coming in at £4. Then get to yet another midfielder, and that is Ender Sekiki, who is 50 L5 or 55, which is decent. Sadly, high scores are carried by decisives, as seen there and there. Gets himself a 40 to about a 40, well, high 40s every game, which is decent. Seems to come off the spell of being subbed on as well. Plays against Yeni Malatya, who I believe actually are a lower tier Turkish league team, so I think that should be all good in the hood for him. But yeah, sadly a little bit on the decisives, but yeah, 55 midfielder for about £9 really isn't too bad. I did debate picking a few up myself, but it is a bit mid-ground, but for about a tenner, it's actually some of the best players you can get. Like I said earlier, 52 for a defender isn't crazy. The thing going for this guy, though, is he's literally coming in at about £3. None of these are decisives, all by all-round, which is a 70 and a 60, and another almost 60 there via all-round, which is actually really, really decent. But yeah, defenders are very saturated with scores, 50 plus when it comes to L5. But for someone who's £3.50, it's it's one of the best players again you can get for that amount. So there's a new player that creeped in yesterday and would actually not be too bad or too hard to pick up for cheap, just because he recently had loads and loads of cards here, going for about £5 to £7. But also I think we've still got a while on this league, so I think it wouldn't actually be too bad of a pickup. And that is Pablo Futeres. L15 of 45, L5 of 58. That's actually really good, and I'd be very surprised if you won't be able to go and buy him for a tenner, mainly because he's been mass supplied and literally almost every single card was won for under a tenner. So all of these people will, potentially be picking themselves up a decent little profit, and at the same time you can actually get someone who's playing really, he's actually very well performing. Even his L40s looking pretty decent. Now I wouldn't want to hold on to these cards for a long time. Again, he is a defender who sadly slightly relies on decisives. I mean, he would have got a decent score of 55 even without the decisive there. But yeah, slightly dependent on decisives. But 58 for a defender for a tenner is not too bad whatsoever. And it will obviously be a new season card, which could be slightly more demanded. We get underway with Danjeli Arasik, and I'm pretty happy with this guy's score. Get himself a nice little 54 for obviously an L15 of 44. Pretty decent. So if we can go look at the SO5 right here. Now, his scores are carried by 2 decisives right here, which is a bit of an annoyance. Does pull in again a 32 high 40s on the average. It's not the most demanded thing in the world, but what I will say is a 54 for literally about £4 or £5 for a midfielder is very good. Midfielders and forwards are quite hard to get a high L50, high L5, just because of them, getting decisives and decisives carrying the L15 over 45. But yeah, not too bad. I mean, if you look into the statistics and don't look into that his statistics are mainly carried by the 2 decisives, which hopefully people will be, caveman enough to just look at the stats and not too much into it, could be a nice little pick up there for £4 or £5. Today's the cheap players, and there actually are a fair few cheap players. Again, I do probably plan of picking up some Pablo Futeres. I just like that he's a new card. I also like that obviously the Peruvian league's got a while on it compared to some of the European leagues. And again, even some of the Batishka players aren't looking too bad with him and Lima. So without further ado, now let's go and talk about defenders. So right here is what you'll be able to see when I was talking about defenders slightly saturated. Because all these players here are basically under 30 quid. In fact, the majority of these are even under £10. And you can see you got a 58, 56, 57, 53, 50, 59, 58, 52, 53, 52, 58. And I'm sure there's probably like another 5 or 6 players I didn't add just because maybe they're like 30 quid and they had like a 55 to like a 58 or whatever. So you can see they're quite saturated. And we've seen in the past that defenders haven't worked too well because of the oversaturation. So that's probably something to bear in mind. Obviously, I've got 5 of this guy at the moment. He actually is scoring the highest out of these players. I think there might be one more player, but I think it was like 70 quid who has a higher L5. So yeah, quite happy with that. So now let's go underway with the players who are more than a tenner. And yeah, let's go start off with our good friend here, Alexov Shidrunkov. Now this guy's quite difficult because there's only 177 cards issued. And also, since in playing well, not one person has listed them for about the going rate. Now, a score of 56 is pretty decent, especially if we go look at his scores right here. Does have one of the scores carried by decisive, but other than that, very consistently getting 50. Plays against Spartak Moscow, who, if I'm not wrong, are quite a superior team over Rostov. But yeah, I mean, if I could go and get one for 15 quid, I could. I might go and try and haggle a few for 15 quid, but this works really out of your favour. Because what people do is they go, why would I give him to you for 15 quid? If, you know, you want him, you've got to go and buy 31 quid, pay 31 quid for him. So, yeah, that works really out of your favour, but 15 quid, I'd probably look at picking up 1 or 2 of him. Nice thing with this guy as well is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, I probably couldn't use him next week because he does lose that high decisive. But there we go, that is the first of the more expensive defenders. The second of the more expensive defenders, someone I went and picked up 5 of early in the week for about 30 quid. You can see right here, 30 to 32. Is the likes of Roman Eganev. Now, I did actually try and sell some of these at about 40, but I think only one has actually had a high sell. He's actually kept dropping since then. He literally went from 30, and then for some reason they were not on the market up until 50, and now he's back down to 33. One of the reasons for this, I think, is because this guy was looking really good value for money, but then this guy had a good game. This guy had a good game. Who else had? This guy had a good game. And because more and more players had good games, he became, you know, less good value for money and more saturated when it came to defenders getting high scores. So I think that was something that worked out in his favour. The thing that does work in his favour, again, he is the best performing defender. He's also, his 2 recent scores, this is just a 77 with an 82 all round. You know, very good. They do play against CSK, which, if I'm not wrong, are a pretty decent team when it comes to the Russian league. But yeah, I can see there being some decent demand from him just off the back of these 2 scores and him being the highest performing defender. You can use it going into next week's Underdog. We then get underway with Just Small. Again, this is another one of the Eredivisie guys who didn't play this weekend, but he played 2 weeks ago. I've already gone and picked up 2 of this guy. As a L5 of 58. Bear in mind I'm picking this guy up for like 13 quid, whereas I'm picking up someone with a 59 for 30 quid. Seems pretty decent value for money. We go look at his scores. 1 score was absolutely carried by a decisive, but other than that, 67 all round, 47 all round, 56 all round. You're always looking for the all round because all round shows consistency. Decisives shows inconsistency, unless that decisive is paired up with like an all round of about 30, 40. We then move underway midfielders, and you can see right here, again, midfielders, not as saturated as defenders, but still slightly saturated. On top of that, you have to bear in mind I didn't add a few players into the list, just because I probably already had quite a lot of midfielders. So to start off here with Yuba Diarra, pulling in a score of 52. Did really well last week, if you remember. Went from, if we can go here, £9 all the way up here to £14, and then it went back down here to £9. Already rebounded 12, so I mean, I haven't picked up any yet, and he'd probably have to drop a little bit until I wanted to buy some, because 52 for £12 isn't the best value for money. It's something you can go into, but it's not really the best value for money when it comes to midfielders. You'd have to drop a little bit more for me to want to buy him. So the second player we get to, who I actually think will be potentially pretty well demanded, mainly because he plays for Salzburg, and that is Nicolas Capalado. He's had some really decent scores here. I say he has that. Yeah, they haven't been that amazing, but 47.8, 58.4 off of all rounds, 42, 2 contribution in the Wolfsburg game, and a 43.5 other than that. But yeah, obviously, youngster, so he's got multiple things he's demanded for, so he's got multiple utility. But yeah, I think mainly because he's Salzburg, and he didn't have he didn't have an amazing score, but he didn't have that bad of a score in the last game. But I think really the main pull factor for him is that he's Salzburg. 30 quid for someone pulling in a 55 is not very good value for money, but once again, I think the main thing working for him is that he does play for Salzburg, and you know, it's quite a favourable team. Next player we get to is Dejan Lujovic. Now, 57 L5 is really good, especially as the L15 even allows him to make into the limited specialist tournament, which is decent. The problem with this guy is he is reliant on decisives, because that scores a decisive, that scores a decisive, sorry, that scores a decisive, that scores a decisive, that scores a decisive, and that's him when he doesn't get decisive. So the problem for him is he is reliant on decisives. Does play against Midfielder, who I do believe are one of the bottom teams in the Bundesliga. But yeah, for £11-12 he's actually not too bad, especially if you swindle some for a tenner. But yeah, not too bad. I haven't picked up any myself because I wasn't too sure about him literally being carried by decisives. But yeah, for him being 57 for about 12 quid, that is, you know, pretty decent bang for your buck. We now move on to another midfielder that I do believe only played yesterday. Now, he's actually not very good value for money when it comes to bang for your buck, 55 for 29 quid. But what I do like about him is his scores have been progressive, and they've all been all round around about 50. For example, he's gone from DMP'd, because he got red carded, obviously, 49, 40, well, that would have been a 50, a 56, and a 65. And all of these were all off of all round. So that's pretty decent. On top of that, because the score's been progressive, obviously that's a good show of form. The only problem is 30 quid for someone with these scores. You've really got to hope that people are really going to want to go for the, I guess maybe the all, you know, I guess they're intrigued by the all-round, or just that his scores have been progressive. On top of that, he obviously had this really nice spell there, and that could also be a pulling factor for people who want to buy this card. But with forwards, and as you can see, this is the most lacking position out of all of the positions. And on top of that, I've even let some slightly lower scores filter into these, just because, again, it is quite hard to get some decent players. So without further ado, let's get underway with the players. So we're going to start with Robbie Robinson, again a player I covered earlier in the week. When we look at these scores, we've got 57, he hasn't played yet, but 51, 55, 66, 54, 52. So coming in at the second best is Robbie Robinson. He's on back-to-back contribution, which is pretty nicely demanded. He's also probably got another game or two in his locker in terms of, you know, being able to get a good score and carry on playing. But the main thing we're looking at here is him getting a 56 all round, and then him getting back-to-back goals. 30 quid, it's quite pricey. That is forwards in a nutshell for you. Again, you have less decent scoring forwards, and he's one of about 3 decent scoring forwards. But there we go, Robbie Robinson is the first one. So I'm going to buy this guy post-game today, but it's quite an interesting one here, because we got ourselves Marco Kovacic. Now, he's going to go himself a nice little score of 55. And 55 L5 for a striker for 11 quid is really good value for money. But he's in an awkward predicament, because he is about to go and lose the score of 38 right here, but he can get nothing higher than a 57.5, which means that he can't actually score a decisive in today's game and be eligible for the underdogs in this up-and-coming week. So basically, we need him to get a score between 38... I mean, he doesn't even have to, but we basically need him to get a score between 30 and 57 for him to be eligible next week and pretty well demanded. Again, a score of 30 wouldn't be bad, but it'd be that he'd be coming off with 2 high decisives, then going on to a low all-round score. Ideally, we want him to do what like Robinson did, where he got a decent all-round score, then 2 decisives. So, you know, a score of like 45 to 55 is what we'd want. I mean, even with a L5 of like, you know, 50 odd, he'd still be pretty well demanded. The problem is, again, if he gets a decisive, he won't be eligible, and yeah, that won't be too good as the investment. So I'm going to kind of wait and watch him play, and then obviously towards the end of the game, if he gets a decent, just all round, but no goal, happy days. And yeah, so his scores look amazing. The one problem with this guy, there are actually 2 other really well-performing strikers, but both of those strikers don't play consistently. Those are Kevin Volland and Thuram. Thuram, I believe, is out with an injury because he DMP'd his last game, and Volland is a sub. I think he's second to Ben Yedder, and I think there might be someone else ahead of him. So, yeah, obviously Wright is a starter. I think, you know, his L5, I think, is actually better than them, but I thought he'd be clear ahead, but he isn't clear ahead just because of those 2, I guess, subs who've been on some decent form as of recently. But yeah, got myself so far 5 of him. If I can pick up some more of him, I will. I'm not going to go and pay 40 quid for him, I'll be completely honest with you. But yeah, I think there'll be really good demand going into next week. Again, the nice thing with him is there's only 100... I don't understand why there's so little supplied. I presume he's being transferred this season? Maybe, yeah. I guess he got transferred at the beginning of the season from a Swedish team, if I'm not wrong. So as a result, there was only supply maybe as of the summer transfer window or whatever. And obviously no previous seasons to that. But there we go. You got yourself Haji Wright. Again, very confident he'll do well. I've got 5 myself. He's pretty inflated right now. Again, as soon as we do start buying cards, they do become quite inflated. But there we go. Haji Wright, extremely good performances. Think he'll do really well going into deadline. And mainly because we are quite lacking when it comes to attackers. We've got a guy who came off the back of yesterday's game, and that is Jacob Southberg. We can look at his SO5s, and yeah, not too bad. Got an all-rounder 34 last game, not amazing. Obviously got a decisive there and an all-round there of 49, which is pretty decent. But yeah, there you go. Just another play because we are completely lacking when it does come to forwards. If we can, I mean, 23 is not amazing for an L5 of 52, I'll be completely honest with you. But he does seem to be a starter. Yeah, when he's not, I don't know, completely injured or whatever, he does seem to be a starter, which is decent. But yeah, not the best value for money forward, but just another forward because, again, we are lacking in that position. So to end off today's episode, might as well go show you guys how the investments are looking so far. So I've picked up 1, 2, 6, 7 Michael Deleuze, who's the striker. I picked up 2 Virgil Midisans. I've got 3 Jai Smalls, obviously another one not there. We've got 1 Daniel Akasek, we've got 1 Lucas Lima, we've got 5 Haji Wrights, I've got 21 Manfold Gnollers, and I've got myself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Roman Evegs, and there's the other small. So loads and loads of cards. What I've kind of realised is if I don't buy early enough, I barely, invest like a third of my budget. So what I started doing is, I guess, paying a price I feel a little less comfortable buying for, but then understanding, okay, Dan, you'll be able to invest the vast majority of your money rather than investing, 20% at a price I feel a lot more comfortable at. This should allow me to make more money. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed today's episode. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the split and, a live variety. I can't obviously promise that they'll all make me money because, obviously this is the first week with the new under 45 underdog, L5 for the underdogs. So yeah, we'll have to see how it goes and learn from this week. But thanks for watching, and see you guys tomorrow with a brand new video.